Once, the Apostle John saw something that is difficult for the human mind to accept. Not a symbol, not a metaphor, a city, a huge city descending from heaven. And it's not just a city, it's New Jerusalem, the final place where God will live with people. But here's the strange thing, most people read this description in the Bible and don't even notice the details. They imagine a beautiful heavenly city, golden streets, light, peace, and they miss the main point. Because if you read the text of Revelation carefully, something much more radical becomes clear. New Jerusalem is not just paradise. It is a completely different reality of existence. A city that has a shape, dimensions, architecture, and even an entrance system. And what is most surprising, there is no temple in it. Think about it, the holy city of God. And there is no temple in it. Why? What does this mean? And why does the description of New Jerusalem look as if it was created not by man, but by the creator of the universe himself? To understand this, we need to go back to the moment when John first saw this city. And that's where the real story begins. The moment when humanity first heard about this city. There is a moment in the book of Revelation that is almost always read too quickly, and that is where the first key detail is hidden. John writes, "I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God." Let's focus on one word, descends. It is not being built. It is not growing. It is not being created by people. The city comes from above. This is the first sign that New Jerusalem is not the result of human civilization. It is a completely finished reality that belongs to God. And that is why the description of the city seems so strange. Imagine the scale. Revelation speaks of a city that has the shape of a perfect cube. Its length, width, and height are the same. According to biblical measurements, it is approximately 2,200 kilometers. This means that the city is higher than any mountain on earth, higher than the atmosphere. It is more than a city, it is a whole world. But that's not even the most interesting part. When John describes it, he does not speak in the language of a poet. He speaks in the language of a person trying to record what he has seen. Streets, walls, gates, foundations, 12 gates, 12 foundations, and every detail has meaning. These are not decorative elements. They are symbols of the structure of the new creation. For New Jerusalem is not just a city. It is the center of a new world that appears after the end of the old history. And here a second question arises, one that almost no one asks. If this city descends from heaven, where was it before? Has it always existed? Was it created specifically for the finale of human history? And it is here that the description of Revelation begins to reveal an even deeper mystery. Because the architecture of this city looks as if it replicates a very ancient place, a place that is mentioned in the Old Testament. And if this is so, then New Jerusalem is not a new idea of God. It is the completion of a very old plan. In the next part, we will look at one detail that most people overlook. Why this city is shaped like a cube, and why this shape appears in the Bible in only one place. A shape that cannot be invented by accident. Most cities in the world do not have perfect geometry. Cities grow chaotically. Streets change, buildings appear gradually. But New Jerusalem is described differently. Its shape is perfectly symmetrical, a cube. The length is equal to the width. The width is equal to the height, and it looks strange until you remember one very old biblical detail. There's only one place in the entire Bible that had this shape, the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. It was the most sacred part of the temple, a place where almost no one was allowed to enter. The Ark of the Covenant stood there, and it was there, according to the beliefs of Israel, that God's presence resided. Okay, now pay attention to the paradox. The Holy of Holies is a cube. New Jerusalem is also a cube. The only difference is in scale. The Holy of Holies was a small room. New Jerusalem is a city the size of a continent. This means one very important thing. What was once the holiest place in the temple has now become the entire city. God's presence is no longer limited to a small room. It fills the entire space. That is why Revelation contains a phrase that is often overlooked. I did not see a temple in it. Why? Because a temple is no longer needed. A temple exists where there is distance between God and people, but in New Jerusalem, that distance disappears. The whole city becomes a place of God's presence, and that is why John describes another strange detail. In this city, there is no sun, and there is no moon. For the ancient world, this sounded almost impossible because the sun was the source of all light, but John writes something completely different. The light of the city is God's glory. Not lamps, not fire, not stars. God's presence becomes the light itself. And here another mystery arises. If this city is so holy, then who can live in it? Because if you look at the description of the gates and walls, it becomes clear. New Jerusalem is not just an open city. It has very clear boundaries, and these boundaries have a deep meaning. In the next part, we will examine one of the most mysterious details. Why does this city have 12 gates, and why are the names of the tribes of Israel written on each gate? 12 gates that tell the story of humanity. There is a detail in the description of New Jerusalem that at first glance seems like just beautiful symbolism. But if you look closer, it reveals one of the main ideas of the entire biblical narrative. John writes that the city has 12 gates. On each gate is the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And at each gate stands an angel. It looks like a decorative description. But in the Bible, there are almost never decorative details. Every symbol means something. And here is the first important point. In the ancient world, the city gate was not just a passageway. It was a place of power. Decisions were made at the gate. Trials were held there. The fate of people was decided there. The gate was a point of transition between two worlds, the external and the internal. Now imagine the scale of this image. The city of God has 12 entrances, and each of them is associated with the tribes of Israel. Why is that? Because the history of Israel in the Bible is not just the history of one people. It is the beginning of a great plan. It is through this people, according to biblical logic, that God begins to form a new reality for all humanity. And so, another detail appears in the description of the city. The foundations of the walls have 12 bases, and on them are written the names of the 12 apostles. Here, an amazing symmetry emerges. The gates are the tribes of Israel. The foundations are the apostles. The Old Testament and the New Testament, two histories, two eras, but in New Jerusalem they are united in one structure. This city is literally built on the history of faith. The past and the future merge in one space. And that is why the walls of the city are described as extremely high up. They are not only for protection, they are a separation of the new world from the old. Because New Jerusalem is not just a capital. It is the point where human history ends and something else begins. And here another mystery appears. And the gates of the city are made of pearls, not of stone, not of metal. They are made of pearls, and each gate is one large pearl. It seems almost impossible, and that is why this detail raises one important question. Why is the entrance to the city of God symbolized by a pearl? And why did this image already appear in the words of Jesus long before John wrote Revelation? In the next part, we will examine this symbol, and it will become clear that the gates of New Jerusalem are not just architecture, they are a message about what truly has the highest value. A pearl that explains the entrance to the city of God. There is one image that Jesus used only once. A short parable. One phrase, but its meaning strangely echoes the description of New Jerusalem. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a precious pearl, which a merchant, having found, sold everything he had to buy it." At the time, this parable sounded like a metaphor about value, about choice, about the willingness to leave your old life behind for something greater. But in the Revelation of John, this image appears again, and now it is no longer just a symbol. The gates of New Jerusalem are pearls. Each gate is one huge pearl. And here it is important to understand one feature. A pearl is the only gemstone that is born through pain. It appears when a foreign particle enters the shell. something that hurts. To protect itself, the mollusk begins to cover this particle with layers of mother of pearl. Over time, pain turns into beauty. Now look at this image from a biblical point of view. Human history is a history of pain, fall, and struggle. But in New Jerusalem, this pain becomes part of the entrance. A pearl as a gate speaks of one important thing. New life does not come without transformation. And that is why the city has gates, but they never close. John writes about this directly. The gates of the city are always open. There is no night in this city. There is no darkness. There is no danger. Therefore, there is no need to close the gates. This is an image of complete security. But at the same time, there is another detail that cannot be ignored. Despite the open gates, John says one very harsh phrase: "Nothing unclean will enter it." It sounds harsh and even a little paradoxical. The gates are open, but not everyone can pass through. This means that the main barrier is not the walls and not the angels at the gates. The main barrier is human nature itself. And this is where the description of New Jerusalem moves to an even deeper level. Because the city changes not only space, it changes the very reality of life. In this city, there is no death, there is no pain, there are no tears. John writes a phrase that sounds like the conclusion of all human history. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. This is not just a poetic image. It is a statement that the very structure of the world will be different. But then the most important question arises. If this city is so perfect, why does it descend from heaven to earth? Why doesn't God leave people in heaven? Why does the end of history look not like an escape from earth, but like a renewal of all creation? And this is where we come to the deepest idea of New Jerusalem. In the next part, we will discover a meaning that changes our very understanding of what paradise is. The biggest misconception about paradise: most people imagine paradise in a very simple way. What? Somewhere far away. In heaven. Outside the world. A place where people go after death. This image has become so familiar that almost no one checks it in the text of the Bible itself. But when John describes New Jerusalem, he shows a different picture. People do not ascend to the city. The city descends to the people. This radically changes the meaning. The end of the story is not an escape from earth. The end is the renewal of earth. Revelation speaks of a new heaven and a new earth. This is not the complete destruction of the world. It is its transformation. It is as if reality is undergoing a purification, a complete restructuring. And after that, the city of God appears. This means one very important thing. God's plan from the beginning was not for people to leave the world. His plan is to restore it. If we go back to the beginning of the Bible, to the book of Genesis, we can see a strange parallel. People begin their story in a garden, Eden, a place of harmony between God, man, and nature. But the story does not end with the garden. It ends with a city. This is no coincidence. The garden is the beginning. The city is maturity, civilization that is no longer separated from God. And so New Jerusalem is described as a space where the river of life flows. This is another image from the book of Genesis. There was also a river there, and there was also a tree of life there. But after the fall, people lost access to it. In New Jerusalem, the tree of life returns. John describes it in a very unusual way. It bears 12 fruits, each month a new fruit, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. This means that even after the end of history, God does not create a static world. Life goes on. There is development. There is movement. There is a future. New Jerusalem is not a museum of eternity. It is a living world. And here comes one detail that is almost never explained. If the city is the center of the new creation, what is beyond its borders? Because the text of Revelation mentions nations walking in its light. This means that New Jerusalem is not the only place of existence. It is the heart of a new reality. And this brings us to the last and most important question. If this city is the final home of humanity, then who exactly will become its inhabitants? And the answer to this question changes the meaning of the entire description, because New Jerusalem is not just a place, it is a people, And that is what the finale of this vision is about. A city that is actually a people. When John finishes his description of New Jerusalem, he suddenly changes his perspective. At first it seems that he's only talking about architecture, walls, gates, foundations, streets, but then a phrase appears that turns the whole image upside down. John writes, "I saw the city, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband." Pause on this comparison. The city is like a bride. This is a strange image, because a bride is not a place, it is people, and this is where the main meaning of New Jerusalem is revealed. It is not just the geography of the future, it is a community of people who have become part of God's new creation. That is why the text says, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with men." Not a temple, not a sanctuary, not a distant heaven, a dwelling place. God is no longer separate from humanity. He lives among them. And that is why there is no longer a need for a temple in this city, because all of reality becomes a place of God's presence. This is the final point of the story that began in Eden. There, God walked alongside man. After the fall, this closeness was lost. And New Jerusalem is the return of this closeness, but on a new level. Not a garden, but an entire city. A world where people no longer hide from God. A world where fear disappears. A world where evil no longer has a place. That is why John speaks very simply and very strongly. The former things have passed away. And this is one of the most important phrases in the entire Bible, because it means that the history of pain, loss, and struggle is not the final reality. It has an end, but this end does not look like destruction. It looks like the creation of a new world. That is why the description of New Jerusalem ends with words that sound like an open invitation. Whoever is thirsty, let him come. Not a command, not coercion, an invitation. And here it is worth saying one important thing. The Bible never describes New Jerusalem simply as a beautiful picture of the future. It describes it as a direction, as a reality toward which history is moving. And perhaps that is why this city is described in such detail, so that people do not perceive it as a myth, but as a promise. If this topic has opened up something new for you, subscribe to the channel. Here we analyze biblical texts, symbols, and prophecies in such a way that they reveal a deeper meaning that usually goes unnoticed. Because sometimes a single detail in an ancient text can change the way we see the entire history of humanity. And New Jerusalem is perhaps the most powerful image in this history,